You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. Greetings from wherever you may be. This is Doug Thorpe and another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm excited today to have a gentleman with me who is a longstanding executive from UPS. He made his career there and has been retired a little bit, and he's turned his attention to leadership development. His name is Noel Massie. Noel, welcome to the show.
Well, Doug, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today on leadership and leadership development. And I hope your audience, obviously looking for some content on that, is able to enjoy our conversation for the next few minutes. Yep.
For sure. Well, with that, Noel, give us that kind of high-level flyover of your journey through your professional career, and then we'll get into the leadership work that you're doing now.
Sure, happy to do that. I spent, as you mentioned when you opened, my career at UPS, and I started in the organization like most do as a college student, working as an electrical engineering student, going to college, looking for a way to pay for my education. And UPS was the perfect place for me at the time that I did that. It was a part-time job, working at night. I got benefits and all that kind of stuff while I was living off campus. And my brother and I, and it was great. And so after a few years of the part-time work, I accepted a position at Hewlett-Packard. And that's when UPS approached me and said, hey, wait a minute, we kind of like what you do, and, would you stay? And I love the organization. And number one, I was in a leadership capacity at the time when that was offered. I was a part-time supervisor, but I became a full-time supervisor back in the 80s. And that was my first real serious role in leadership, candidly, because I was assigned with about 80 employees at that time, and there were supervisors and leaders under me. And so having said that, I went on to become a manager in the organization in the mid-'80s with about 500 employees at that time. And then I went on to become a division manager in the late 80s. And that's when you get about 1,000 employees. And I became a president in 97 after a stint in Philadelphia. My family and I, my wife and two sons, relocated to Philadelphia, and I became a COO. And from there, I became a president in 97. And I was a president of 5 different business units over about, I'd say, a 17-year period. Then I became vice president of U.S. operations. And candidly, I was about to retire in 2016. And the organization asked me not to do that. And if I would take on the role of vice president of U.S. operations, and I gladly did. It was something that was very fulfilling and rewarding. And I tell people all the time that the most difficult decision I ever made was leaving the organization, candidly. I enjoyed what I was doing. From the very first day I started in a leadership position, I enjoyed it. But the point that we're going to get to is I wrote this book called Congrats, You've Been Promoted, because when I was vice president of U.S. operations, baby boomers like myself were leaving the organization at a fast rate, and we were promoting at a great velocity. So that meant Gen Z, millennials, were taking the mantle on the front lines of the organization. I mean, the real front lines, working with Teamsters and tractor trailer drivers, et cetera. And we were very interested in leadership development. We always had been as an organization, but the volume of individuals was really beyond our capacity to develop. And I was chairman of the board of the LA Chamber of Commerce and a couple of business organizations. And you know what? Everyone had the same issue. All the presidents and GMs had the same issue: frontline development. So I wrote this book for a person who is recently promoted, or a business owner in the business of promoting, or a company in the business of promoting, so they could develop people that are in the trenches. Because typically when you read books on leadership, they're high level for the next person looking to be an entrepreneur, Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, but there's not too many books out there that say, here's how you handle frontline, maybe union employees, and you're 27 and someone 60 is working for you, and they come at you with a very aggressive posture. So what do you do with that? How do you handle it? So my book is Congrats, You've Been Promoted is not a theoretical book. It's really a seminar in a book, candidly. And I just had the privilege of teaching that to the city of Chicago's Office of Inspector General this Monday. 30 attorneys went to it. And it went well, and they loved it. And because they got hands-on experience on how to handle individual people in a leadership capacity and develop their team to do that. So that's the story of me and why I wrote the book.
Well, you've hit on a sweet spot that is near and dear to me as well. My actual first book, which is over here over my right shoulder, The Uncommon Commodity, is the same thing. It's a bit of a common sense guide for first time managers. And I've spoken of this often. We have a strange tradition in modern business. We need a supervisor. So what do? We promote the best performer on the team.
Yes, correct.
We take the number one guy or gal that is doing whatever the work might be about, and we seldom ask them if they really want to be a manager. We just say, we're going to promote you to manager or supervisor or team lead or whatever the title may be. And there they go. They're off on a whole new career track, and some make it and some don't. But often what we do in the meantime is we seriously impact productivity, number one, because we took our best performer off the line. And then whether or not they figure it out and do the right thing and help promote and advance the team is another whole issue.
Correct.
And to your point, most of the modern training is for higher level, second, third, fourth promotion, beyond that for frontline. So kudos for calling that out and putting something together on it. That is a critical need.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And, so far it's been received really extremely well by young people. I've gotten a lot of feedback on the benefit they've received from it. I also developed the masterclass series. It's 9 episodes. It's on my website. And it takes folks through the key factors. The value equation is where I start. And then I get into tactics. So what do you do when type of thing. And I also lean into the importance of the role that you have accepted and how you need to understand what that actually is, which most people don't. You talked about derailment. Derailment happens within that first few years. And I would see it all the time. And the real point is that you hit on it when you go, who gets promoted? Generally, a business owner will promote the person or a company that's the best performer, but that's not always the person that's going to become the best leader, right? I mean, surely it's not going to be the worst performer, but the point of the matter is that leadership is not rocket science, but it is a science. And psychology is around leadership to motivate, inspire, and encourage people to be great at what it is ever they do does take some understanding when it's all said and done. And I didn't understand that at 19, 20, 23 years old. I had to be taught. And I had great mentors. And fortunately for me, I had really great mentors. I had people that were highly experienced throughout my entire career. Because one of the points I make in the book, and I've made on numerous radio shows and podcasts when I talk about this, is everyone needs a coach. Even Michael Jordan had a coach, okay? Kobe Bryant had a coach. Great players, Tom Brady had a coach. Everyone has a coach. And the point of that comment is that if you don't have someone giving you feedback as you develop your skill set, you're probably not going to be as good at whatever it is you want to do at the end of the day as you would like to do it, whether it's leadership or fishing. I mean, the fact of the matter is I encourage highly that individuals look at who they believe is the most admired person in their organization on a leadership level. And they approach that person and say, just, hey, can we have a cup of coffee, Doug? I'd like to just sit down and kind of talk to you about this leadership thing and some of your thoughts on it. It's extremely valuable for young people to understand that they have to initiate that. Don't wait for it to be initiated. Because if someone initiates it, it's probably because there's a problem.
Right.
So development is something that individuals need to own completely. They need to own. If you wanted to become a lawyer, you take ownership and go, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to own going to law school. But no one's going to walk up to you and say, hey, would you like to be a lawyer? Can I help you get through all the 7 or 8 years of that? No, you have to own that. Leadership's the same thing. And the problem, however, is that you can't go to a college and say, I want a degree in leadership. That's it. You think about it. But there's something called the Fortune 500. And in every one of those companies, there's a CEO. And under him is all these leaders, right? So how'd they learn how to do that? Well, most of the time it's accidental tourism. They're not taught, which is why you see the kind of challenges you see. But here's one thing that all organizations have in common. I don't care if it's a small business, a Dunkin' Donuts, or a Fortune 500 company. They all have leaders in them. Law firms have leaders in them. Hospitals have leaders in them. There's really nothing in our lives, when you think about it, that doesn't have a leader in it, a manager, a supervisor. But where do people go to learn that, right? So that's what is really the point of all these things we've just talked about, is providing, some content there is very necessary today.
And if I may add to that, all those organizations, as you pointed out, have roles that are defined as administering leadership, but the so what is, does the person sitting in that role have the capacity to do that? And they might have the title, they might have the authority bestowed on them by the organization, but are they really capable and qualified to fulfill the mission of that seat?
And that's exactly right.
That's where the rub comes in.
No doubt. Because leadership is right. Leadership is not a promotion.
Right.
It's not. It's not a promotion. Leadership is a discipline. Yeah. It's not a promotion. And the fact of the matter is that in that discipline called leadership, it's highly disregarded. Yet when you look at why companies fail, typically is because the people inside that organization aren't supporting it in some way, or the leadership is broken in some way, or what have you. And people leave, right? People quit people. They don't quit companies. And the fact of the matter is, the foundation of my book, literally the foundation of my book, is the terms and conditions of value-based leadership. And I'll say that again. I'll say the terms and conditions of value-based leadership is the foundation of the book. It's throughout the book. And what that goes to, Doug, it says that everyone has terms and conditions. You think about when you buy an app, you have to check a box. You accept the terms and conditions. You buy an airline ticket, you got to check the box. These are the terms and conditions. What people need to understand, leaders and business owners especially, you hire someone, you promote them, you are clicking their box. They have terms and conditions. They're psychological. And if I were to say, hey, Doug, can you write down 5 non-negotiable conditions you need to have in a relationship that you're going to have with a company, a person? Doesn't matter. What are the non-negotiables? Write them down. And I did this Monday with the 30 attorneys that I took through the seminar. And they always come up the same, whether it's attorneys or people in retail. Respect, listening, dignity. People don't sell you their dignity, okay? They sell you their time, their services, their sweat. They do not sell you their respect, right? And people always write those down. And I make a point that when companies don't adhere to the terms and conditions that employees have of them, they have a high turnover rate. Mm-hmm. And companies with high turnover rates don't thrive and become the next Microsoft. It's not how it works.
Yeah. You know, I've told this story before, and I'll tell it again because I think it's pertinent here. A good example of that. And when there's a lot being talked about now about company cultures and the mindset that companies have, and I say that a company culture is nothing more than a definition of how you're going to do things. How are you going to treat each other? How are you going to treat your customers, your suppliers, et cetera? And my story has to do with 2 contrasting companies, similar size, big organizations. And in both cases, they had a written list of company values that had been created at the top and was pushed down through the organization. And both of them, coincidentally, had them printed on the back of the employee ID badges. So it was real easy to, look up your badge and remind yourself of the company values. Well, in one company, they lived those values every day. And you could hear leaders at all levels when decisions were getting made, they would be asking the question, are we fulfilling our values with this decision? And I had multiple cases reported to me of people literally watching executives turn their badge over and do a reminder of the values and change decisions because they were not going to fulfill the value.
Sure.
But at the other company, I had opposite stories of people going into meetings, watching decisions get made that were just walking all over the values.
Right.
And there was no trust, no belief, no consistency in the minds of the workforce at large over what senior leaders were doing, because the values were nothing more than printed material on the back of the card.
Right. Well, you made a couple of really important points just now, and in the book and in the seminars I teach, I emphasize strongly: culture in an organization is built at the top, is executed at the bottom. You can say whatever you want and have all the mission statements you want, but if the person that is serving your client, standing in front of people, if their behavior doesn't emanate in the way that the culture, the organization desires to have, doesn't exist, then it's because the leaders aren't intentionally driving it to exist. And I want to talk about intentional leadership. Intentional leadership is intention. It means you intend to do something. For instance, in the very front end of the book, I talk about values first. I go leaders, CEO, general manager, employee. All of you need to see integrity the same way, period. Okay. All of you need to understand it. In our organization, we may have tough days, long days, hard days. Here's a day we're never having, the one that lacks integrity. We are an ethical organization. Here's the day we're never having, the one that's unethical at all, ever. And when CEOs fail to say those things vividly to their teams, then they are leaving that to chance. They are allowing human nature and the stresses of a moment to enter their organization in an unsuspecting way. And that's what intentional leadership is about. It's that I intend to shape this thing in a certain way. Because when you have an organization that embodies integrity, people are ethical, right? It starts to bleed into how you speak to each other as partners in the organization, how you treat each other as associates, how employees see the leaders. Because when it's all said and done, what comes out of your mouth, because words matter, your people are going to follow. They want to believe in you. They want to hear you. And the irony of that is leaders want organizations to behave, and they want to be the role model or whatever the deal is, and people follow their lead. That's what that is, right? You're the CEO. You want them to follow your lead. The opposite is you're the CEO. Do you want your people to follow your lead? I mean, the person that says, well, no, I don't want them to follow my lead, then they probably won't be the CEO too long. So you want them to follow your lead. That's a good thing. Okay. If your lead doesn't include values which drive behavior, you're not leading, because leadership is the ability to influence the behavior of a group or an individual. That's what it is, right? And behavior is driven by values, right? You don't go rob a store. You know why? Because your behavior to rob a store means your values are corrupt. Okay, so you drive behavior first. And then that behavior becomes putting the widget in the hole. That's how it works. Right. So emphasizing behavior more than anything else gives you a pathway to other things that lead to success in any company. I mean, candidly. And so, so that's why that becomes a major component of the conversation.
Yeah. And on your point about behavior, that's where, as you were saying that, what was going through my mind, that's where a lot of hiring practices break down. A company looks at a situation and says, I need to fulfill a certain job description. I need some workers that are going to do
Right.
X, Y, and Z. And that's all skills based, technical based, things like that. But there aren't too many people that have an equal or greater evaluation of behavior that's going to be challenged during the hiring process. And the question is, do you, Noel, as an individual, behave in the way I would like my people to behave in my company? Are you naturally bent that way? In other words, use your example, are you a store robber or not? I don't want
Yeah, that's
store
right.
robbers in my
Right.
company.
Right. That's right. And it's not just, and I want to dispel any narrative around this conversation being about you're hiring white collar workers, people that are technologists or, supervisors that lead even in a retail, environment. When you hire someone to be a welder as a boss in a construction company, if your conversation with that person, understanding they're joining your team and someday may become a future leader, if from the very beginning of that relationship, the terms and conditions aren't established around ethics, integrity, and those values of fairness, then you don't get trust. That doesn't happen. Because when that person is making a weld, they need to know that in that company, we do welds one way, the right way. Okay, our welds, we will never rush through anything we're doing because we do it one way, the right way. And why is that important? So in the book, I also talk about, I don't want to keep referencing the book, but the point is, I talk about what integrity actually is, and I use an example, Doug, of the condominium that you may have heard of in Florida that collapsed, right, a few years
Mhm.
ago, and about 107 or 8 people died in that moment. They were asleep in their beds. It's 3 in the morning, and the building collapsed. Right, it collapsed. And they went and examined, do the investigation. How could this happen? Let's look at the inspection reports. I mean, my goodness, blah blah blah, and everything was signed off. All the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted, and yet, people lied. People lied. Bottom line, and it cost 108 people their lives. And the same thing occurred with a bridge in Minnesota where people were driving to work, commute hour, blah blah blah. The bridge collapsed. Right? They went back and looked at all the records, and people had signed off that the structure was good. Yeah, it was getting old, but it was still safe, and it wasn't safe. And so leaders, integrity, when I use that example, I say integrity in a leader is no different than those moments. Is that your integrity as a human, as a leader, as a person, if you don't emphasize what that is to people at the entry point, the welder, the person putting tires on the car, right? You're saying if it's not right, we're not doing it. If there's any question, there's no question. That's how they build confidence in you. See, because once people have no doubt of Doug's integrity, Doug's the business owner. Once the people you hire have no doubt of your integrity, they will follow you even to the mistakes you make. But they will always be forthright and saying, hey, Doug, I need to talk to you about something. This doesn't seem quite right to me. So you'll know the unknowns. You'll be able to know what you don't know. And they'll know that we do one thing. We do things one way, the right way. That's what Doug emphasizes is who we are as a company. We're ethical, and it really, really matters.
Yeah. I agree with you, and it's funny you talk about the right way. I know a guy that owns a construction company in Florida. You mentioned Florida, not related, but he owns a commercial construction business. And as I was meeting him, getting to know him, we were walking around some of his job sites. I said, "So, talk to me about company values. What do y'all do here? What's your mantra?" And he said, "We do the right thing." And I actually chuckled at him and I said, well, that sounds great. What does it really mean? What do you really do? And he said, oh, I'm dead serious. He said, we're in construction. Stuff happens and goes wrong. We make mistakes. He said, but guess what? We own it. And whether it's a sub or one of my people, he said, we're going to own it. And I make it clear, talk about your terms and conditions. He said, I make it clear to my subs, if there's going to be a mistake, they're going to eat it. They're not going to get to pad it somewhere else in the job. And furthermore, we're going to disclose it to the customer. We're going to show them what happened. We're going to talk about the cost to fix it. And we're going to prove to them that number's not going to show up again in another change order somewhere down the road to make us get whole financially because we made a mistake. And he said, that's doing the right thing. He said, now, what does that afford me? He said, I get to charge more than most people. He said, my jobs are not cheap. Mm-hmm. He said, but my customers in the long run, all things considered, they know they're going to get a better product for a more fair price than they will with anybody else.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that was a great discussion because, one of the things I heard a long time ago from the founder of UPS in the legacies that individual, James E. Casey, left for the leadership is that if you work for money and money alone, there's no better way not to get it. You have to work for values. You have to work for perfection. You have to work for making sure that what you say you're going to do, you do. That when you say to a client, an employee, an associate, that you're going to do something, you need to keep your word. And when you keep your word and you are honest and you're honorable to your word, then you will find that great things begin to happen. And the person you're talking about with the construction company had some semblance of that when you do great things, and the irony of that on some level, Doug, is this to me, is like when you're on the highway and you see the motels on the side of the road near the Motel 6, right? You're not spending $400 a night to stay in one of them things, okay? That's just not that, and they don't expect you to because that's not their value equation. But if you go stay in a Ritz, you're not staying in that for $40 a night, okay? They know that they're going to charge you a certain premium because they're going to give you a premium treatment when it's all said and done. But the point is that people like staying in the Ritz way more than the Motel 6 when it's all said and done, right? We love being treated well is the point of that. Think about any experience you've ever had, an airline, catching an airline, staying in a hotel, going into a coffee shop, and you walk through the coffee shop door and they go, hey, good morning, Doug. How are you today? You know what? That coffee could cost a whole dollar more than the person around the corner. But because you walked in the door and the person knew you and said, good morning, Doug. How are you today? And they know what you order, and that is service. And when you serve others and you do it genuinely in a way that you're talking about the person who runs that company you're talking about, yes, you can charge more. You're going to get more business. You're going to retain more business, number one. People will be very, very reticent to leave you because service really matters. And it matters a lot, yes.
Yeah. Well, not to beat it to death, but now that we're talking about this, it reminded me of something that just happened yesterday with my wife. She's got a little local nail salon she likes to go to and been going there for years. And, she knows all the ladies in it and everything. Well, yesterday was my wife's birthday and she told me, part of my day, I want to have a nail appointment. I said, great, go do that. That's good. So she called, got it all scheduled. Well, lo and behold, when she got there, there wasn't another customer in the shop. No, nobody, but all the girls were there.
Yep.
But there wasn't any other customer in the shop. And she kind of thought it was a little odd because they're a good sized shop and do some good business. But she thought, oh, that's okay. So her person got started and everything. Next thing she knew, she heard this racket in the back. They came out in a parade with a birthday cake and a candle on it, and they were singing happy birthday. And,
oh, my goodness.
And they had blocked the time slot. When she called and said she wanted to come in, they blocked the whole slot, made it all very private and very personal, and then bought a cake, had red roses, singing happy birthday and all that. And,
right.
it's like,
yes.
okay, let's think about that. And when she came home, told me the story and showed me the video, my business brain kicked in. I said, how brilliant. I mean, okay, they might have lost X dollars for that hour and a half because they ran everybody else off. But they've got a customer that's been faithful to them for years, number one,
Right.
and recognized that, kept track of when her birthday was, and made something special. And that's gold, man.
Oh,
Because what did she do? I heard her tell 10 different people that story.
exactly. You just hit the nail square. That's it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So they didn't just make her day; they allowed her day to become shared with like you're sharing it with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And if my wife lived where you are, I'd say, "What's the name of that place?" And I tell my wife Amanda, I say, "Hey, honey, Doug was telling me about this. You probably want to have your nails done there." That's
Yeah,
right. That's
yeah.
how it works. Yeah, that's right.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a little more about any other thing about the values-based principles you're talking about that we haven't covered yet.
Yeah, the one that I didn't talk about, and I think this is an important value that you hear thrown around, but people don't understand it very well, and that's the one around trust and fairness. Fairness might just be the most important thing employees look to have from their organization or the person they're working for, and fair days pay, fair days work, is kind of the deal. But what fairness looks like, and just to keep it simple, when I talk to managers and mid-level managers and frontline people, it's the absence of favoritism. That you can't have favorites. That understand as a human being, you will have bias. That's how it works. Someone's going to be the best employee. They're going to be the fastest. They're going to be the most agreeable. They're going to, when you ask them to do something, they're always going to get it done. That's the top 20%. And then you're going to have the bottom 20% that you're going to have to really manage them. You're going to have to manage them hard to get them to be average, right? But the point is that you don't get to have favorites. That person that's your best person, the person that you have to work with, here's what they expect from you. They expect you to treat them as your team members and to develop them in the same fashion all the time. Some may need more development than the other, but you don't get to have favorites as a leader. That's why leadership is a discipline. And then the other thing around trust is people, when companies would talk about, we're going to run a workshop on trust. Okay, you're going to run a workshop on trust. Okay, so that's like baking a cake. Tell me the ingredients that need to go into that cake so that when it's all done, you have a trust cake, right? But you don't get to just have a trust cake. Trust emerges because of many other activities prior, and they're consistent. And we talked about a bunch of them already. We don't need to retrace those. But I tell a story about the guy that works on I have a '64 Mustang, and I travel, and he works on it, and he's had it a couple of times. I can drop that car off to him. No, he's going to give me a fair deal on whatever he's got to do to it. And if I'm on the road, or Amanda, my wife, he'll drive it to my house, put it in the garage, put the key on the tire. Why will I let him do that? Because over a long period of time, we've developed a relationship of trust. When I first met him, if you would have said, "No, do you trust this guy?" I would have, I don't even know him. I don't even know him. So it's not for organizations to think that trust should happen in the infancy of the entry of the person to the organization. It's not going to happen. That's going to occur because you are very consistent in keeping your word in the way that we have just talked about. So I wanted to throw those couple of value comments out there before we get into potentially the tactical part of what's inside this book.
Yeah. Well, one other thing on that, and I likewise talk about the trust thing a lot. And one element of establishing trust and and I agree with you, it's totally a process. And they even talk about it in sales. Sales don't happen until like, and trust your partner there, and but I argue that the same thing happens with the employee-employer relationship. And I agree totally. Trust has to be built over time. Here's the interesting thing that I believe happens when trust does start to happen. Every employee has two gears that they can operate in. The standard gear is tell me my job description, tell me the basic expectation, I'll check the boxes, I'll deliver, I'll meet my requirements. And you might say, well, that's good. If all my employees met all their requirements, we would have a healthy business.
Sure.
That could be good. But there's a second gear that I call discretionary effort. That's that volunteer to go the extra 10% or the extra mile.
That's right.
And when your team starts operating with a higher level of trust, not just between the employee and the boss, but with each other, there's a new degree of discretionary effort, and they'll do something like, hey, Noel, I'm going to cover for Sally. She's got to go pick up a sick kid. You don't have to get in the middle of it. We got it covered.
Right.
Well, that's discretionary effort among peers in the organization.
Yep. You're exactly right. I agree completely. You're spot on with that. But let me maybe augment that a little bit or add to it. Right. Let me just add to that just a little bit for the listeners. Where people struggle, at least my experience in 40 years, is how do you create it? Right. That's where people get stuck. And I actually had great mentors that early in my career that taught me a lot about that discretionary effort extraction, if you will, from people. And so I can just do a small exercise right now with you, and I'd say, okay, Doug, and I'm literally gonna take you through the exercise. I took these just because I taught at Monday these attorneys through, and I literally I go close your eyes, and I need you to do that right now on this podcast. Close your eyes.
I'll do it.
Close your eyes. Okay, I want you to visualize the person in your life that showed the most confidence in you as an individual. I don't care when it was, as a teenager, as an adult, that showed the most. I want you to visualize that person. Now open your eyes. Open your eyes. Now someone entered your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Understand it right now. And this is what I say. Someone just entered your mind. The person that just entered your mind, you will run through a wall for.
Mm-hmm.
You will run through a wall. You will give them all of the discretionary effort you have in your being. And what I say to the leader is, to your employees, can you become that person? When they close their eyes, can they see you? And the day that they can see you, they will give you all the discretionary effort in the world. So what behaviors did that person you just visualized show to you that created that moment for you? Okay, so now here's the challenge. Go create that moment for your people. Individually, one-on-one. They're not a group, they're people, they're individuals. Go create that moment for 10 individuals, and that's your real job. Create that moment for those 10 people over the next year. Create that moment, because then they will run through the wall for you. I worked for a manager when I was in my early 20s that was that person, and I would run through the wall for him, okay? And ironically, I wrote about that in the book, and his name is in the book. I put his name in the book, and he's in his late 70s. He's almost 80 today. And I sent him a copy of it. He didn't know he was in it, right? And he read that part of the book where I talk about this, and he's that person. And it brought tears to his eyes. Here's the point. As a leader, you never know who that person is that you're influencing so much that you are shaping their values and their behavior and their personality and their success. But here's the thing. If you want to be memorable, it's got to be intentional. And if you want discretionary effort, become that person you just saw when you closed your eyes.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that. I often speak about having the privilege of being introduced to the concept of mentorship by my hardworking single mom. She surrounded me with mentors as a young boy, and I picked up the habit and carried it with me. And the person you just asked me about, I have a picture of him under my glass thing here under my keyboard. He's been dead 30 years. I still have his picture on my desk.
There you go. See?
And it was a gentleman that was on my college campus, was a great influence to me during my college years. And I think about principles and ideas that he shared with me and showed me and we talked about. And, yeah, he was that guy.
And the thing that I also do in the seminar I teach is I get them to do that, but then I get them to do it. I say, pick a number two, pick a number three. And what are those folks? And then I have them write down, what do they all have in common? And inevitably, they showed confidence in me. Being the number one thing is they cared about me. I mattered to them. They invested in me. I mean, all of those things kind of come out. And I go, so think about as a leader, what legacy do you want? And honestly, and I'm not, and I don't want to give the impression this is copybook. This is not about being a perfect human being or you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Moments are going to occur, blah, blah, blah. The most important thing about any of that is, are you aware of yourself? And do you, when you make mistakes, acknowledge them and go talk to people? And they'll even remember that, right? I remember people who acknowledge mistakes, maybe more than people who didn't. But that being said, the point that I want to land on when this is all said and done is the legacy you leave, right, is ongoing. It's every single day, and people just fail to understand it. But I worked for someone who was able to share that with me very early in my career, and when I retired, I got over 1,000 emails from people, and they were thankful, positive. You shared, and honestly, 80% of them I couldn't even remember. I mean, because these are like 30-year ago type things, right?
Yeah.
But I would have never been focused in that way, honestly. Had I not been mentored to be focused in that way, I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. I wasn't going to just wake up and learn that on my own. I mean, candidly, I wouldn't have, to be honest with you. When you start your leadership journey when you're young, you don't know. You don't know all that. And this is another thing I say when I'm in the seminar. I go, so what position you have? And they go, I'm a inspector general, investigator. How long you been in the job? 4 years. Okay, so are you better now at year 4 than you were at year 1? And they go, yeah. Okay, were you better at year 2 than year 3? Well, they go, yeah. I say, okay. I say, well, I'm sure you'll be better at year 5 than year 4 type of thing. I mean, because that's how life is. You're going to make mistakes. Okay. That's just part of the growth process. Just never make mistakes and fail to admit you made them. Yeah. That's the big mistake is failing to admit you made them. Right.
Right.
And then you don't learn from them. Okay.
Right. Well, no, we're about up on time. This has been amazing, and I feel like we're going to have a second go round here to get into more of the technical stuff on how to do this. But I do try to keep my episodes about the same length all the time. And tell folks the best way to get a hold of you.
Best way to get a hold of me is to go to my website. Number one, it's noelmassie.com. And there on the website, you'll see all the book, and you can order the book and all this kind of stuff. But there's a contact form there that you can reach my assistant, Kayla, and it's Kayla at noelmassie.com. It's her KAYLAH at noelmassie.com, and she handles all of our scheduling and appointments. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me there. I'm on Instagram, obviously, and then of course the quickest way, as I mentioned, is to go to my website at noelmassie.com.
Great. Well, as always, folks, we're going to have that information in the show notes, so be sure to hop down, check that out, and look at Noel's book. And again, one last time, Noel, thank you so much for sitting in. Really appreciate you being here.
Hey, I really enjoyed the discussion, and just for the sake of your audience, I'm gonna put the book up on the screen just so you can see it. That's what they'll see when they go there. But I've enjoyed the discussion, Doug, a lot, and look forward potentially to more conversation with you.
Absolutely. Well, folks, this is the part of the show I also like to remind you we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, check out the book. And the book title, one last time, is Congrats, You've Been Promoted. And it's a great title. A lot of good content that you'll find valuable if you're in that early part of your career. And I'm guessing, Noel, that the way the book's written, even for the folks that are a little longer in the tooth, there's some great reminders of things that they can probably pick up and take advantage of as well. So
I think so. Yep.
Yep. So with that, folks, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.